Sorry. Welcome to this media briefing on Honorable Vice President's visit to Hungary and Algeria from October 15 to 20th, 2016. To brief you, we have with us Srimati Sujata Mehta, Secretary West MEA, Mr. Subrat Bhattacharya, Joint Secretary Central Europe, Dr. Bibala Bhaskar, Joint Secretary WANA, West Asia, Northern Africa, and OSD2 Vice President, Shri Anshuman Kaur. As usual, the briefing will end with Q&A. So now I give the floor to ma'am.
Thank you, Subrat. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to tell you a little about the upcoming visit of our Vice President to Hungary and Algeria. The Vice President will be in Hungary from tomorrow, that's the 15th of October, to the 17th. This visit is taking place at the invitation of the Prime Minister of Hungary. During the visit, he will meet the Hungarian President, the Hungarian Prime Minister, the Speaker of the National Assembly. He will meet students and academicians. He will visit a town which is identified with Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, Balatanfured. He will also be meeting the Indian communities. So these would be the different major elements of his presence there. To put the visit into the bilateral context, the contact between India and Hungary has been frequent and continuous, but high-level meetings, high-level visits have been relatively fewer. The last such visit was the visit of the Hungarian Prime Minister to India in 2013, and there has been a strong desire from the Hungarian side that they want to receive an Indian dignitary at the highest level. This is an interesting time in Central Europe. This is an interesting time in Europe as a whole. Hungary at this point has a particular approach and position which is, as I said, of interest. So we see this visit, when discussions will happen at a very high level, to get an understanding of the direction of events in Europe, their interplay with events in our part of the world. This will also be a visit during which we will, I think, acknowledge the support we give to each other on international issues, in international fora. So this will be a visit of considerable political significance. The economic significance of the bilateral relationship is also relevant. Hungary is actually a country which has seen substantial Indian investment as a gateway into Europe. In fact, India was Hungary's largest investor, largest foreign investor 2 years ago. And there are at least 15 major Indian companies that operate there and which use Hungary as the base for their activities in the European Union. The cultural ties between India and Hungary are notable. I think the names of so many Indian artists of very high repute are linked to Hungary. Amrita Shergill is only one among them. The Brunner family, the mother and the daughter, for those of you who've been in Delhi, those names are very familiar names in Delhi's cultural history. Elizabeth Brunner, the mother and the daughter. Sir Aurel Stein, who was associated with major archaeological expeditions, discoveries in our part of the world, he was Hungarian. So what I'm trying to say is that Hungary has actually had a tradition of learning devoted to India. So I think this visit will also be an opportunity to try to reconnect with that cultural heritage. earlier this year there was a Ganga Danube cultural festival arranged by our embassy in Budapest, and that, I think, events were arranged across the country in, I think, 15 different places in the country. So there is resonance between the two countries, and in this visit we hope to recapture some of those points of contact. From Hungary, the Vice President is going to travel to Algeria. High-level visits between Algeria and Hungary between Algeria and India have been somewhat fewer than we would like. The last such visit at the highest level took place in 2001, when President Bouteflika had been in India as our chief guest at the Republic Day that year. Since then, they have been waiting for an Indian VVIP visit, and for various reasons that has not proved possible to schedule. Now we have the possibility of continuing that series of high-level visits. The cooperation between India and Algeria has been very substantial, but now, with the growing importance of Algeria in terms of energy security and in terms of food security, we see this as an opportunity to kindle a stronger and a broader relationship. The areas that we would like to focus on in this visit include the opportunity perhaps to give substance to existing discussions on utilizing Algeria's considerable natural resources in terms of phosphates, in terms of gas, in terms of fossil fuels, to look at bilateral arrangements to produce fertilizers in Algeria for export to India primarily. We would also, now this would be an extremely beneficial arrangement. We have entered into such relationships with countries in Algeria's neighborhood, and we would like to do the same with Algeria. We would like to partner them in this enterprise or in this effort. We would like to also develop on the possibility of cooperation in the sphere of space. ISRO has launched satellites for Algeria in the past. We see potential for doing so in the future as well. Algeria is a major producer of petroleum and petroleum products. As you all know, we are a major buyer. We would like to enlarge that relationship with this country. Algeria, in terms of its international profile, its political profile, is an extremely important country in North Africa, in the Arab world. So from that perspective, we would like to enlarge our partnership with them. As part of the Vice President's engagements, he will be meeting President Bouteflika, he will be meeting the Prime Minister, he will meet the head of their Council of States, he will meet the President of their National Assembly. In addition to that, I believe he will hold meetings with other officials. So there is a fairly full program while he will be there from the 17th to the 19th. I wanted to give you a quick summary of the sorts of issues that will be touched upon during this Uri attack happened. And this had a huge profile in what he said in his bilateral meetings as also in his statement. And this will be a major item in the bilateral meetings, both in Hungary and in Algeria. Absolutely. Any other questions?
Ma'am, since Honorable Vice President is touring Algeria, and Algeria is an important Arabian country. It's an oil exporting country. So I want to know, just in a general term, how far the oil diplomacy on behalf of India has done benefit to our the import dependence.
Question. The figures about oil exports I'm going to allow Dr. Balabhaskar to share with you. After that, I would like to try and offer an overall perspective on this. Bala, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. You know, our oil, we have a bilateral trade of 1.56 billion last year. Out of this, around $400 million we are importing oil from Algeria. In the past, it was more than around 1.5 billion we were importing. Because of the crisis and oil prices, this valuation has come down. This diplomacy has led into several areas of cooperation, because we have investments in the railway sector. Because of this positive relationship, they have invited IRCON, Indian Railway Company, to build railways in Algeria. They have undertaken a huge project there of 93-kilometer railway line, and there are other Algeria is very keen to encourage Indian investments in the fertilizer sector. They have very rich, as Secretary West mentioned, rich rock phosphates, and they are very affordable gas. So in this visit we'll be exploring further engagement in this sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala. Let me try and put this into perspective.
Rock phosphate, ma'am, is a raw material for producing.
Rock phosphate is a raw material for producing fertilizers. For producing fertilizer. Let me try and put this into perspective. What do we mean when we say oil diplomacy? The purchase of oil and the sale of oil is largely, at least at this point in time, in the current time, a factor of commerce. What do governments seek? Governments seek those countries that are producing oil are looking to maximize the number of their buyers so as not to be dependent on a single buyer. And countries that are purchasing sources of energy are similarly looking to maximize the sources of supply so as not to be tied to anyone. Algeria is a country that has very large deposits of crude, of natural gas, and now, as has been discovered, of shale gas. So there are multiple types of energy that they would be in the market with. Some of these are already developed, others will develop over time. So they would look to also countries to invest and to engage with them in exploration, prospecting, refining, drilling. So there's a variety of activities that would be associated. No, shale gas has only been recently discovered. They are not yet tapping it. So the purpose of engagement from the perspective of energy security is basically to maximize the sources and to try and ensure that we are not tied down as a buyer to either any country or any particular type. So that is the perspective with which we hold discussions at the highest level. That is really where.
Algeria is member of OIC. Honorable Vice President had recently gone to Nigeria and Mali, which were also OIC members. What does he expect, and what were his previous feedback from OIC member countries regarding Pakistan policy?
As you know, India is not a member of the OIC. The fact of the matter is that there are countries within the OIC that have suffered from terrorism and that have faced sectarian problems. Algeria is actually a country which for more than a decade has fought a very difficult terrorist group, or a series of interlinked, a web of interlinked terrorist groups. So the fight against terrorism is not something that is new to Algeria, as indeed it is not new to Nigeria. So what happens during conversations of this kind at the highest level is that we find there is a meeting of minds on the absolute requirement to fight terrorism, and we are confident that that is what we shall find during the talks that the Vice President will have with his interlocutors and counterparts in Algeria. I think.
Any questions? Yeah,
Yes,
at the back.
please.
Yeah.
When was the last high-level visit by an Indian dignitary to Hungary? And secondly, you mentioned that during his visit, you'll be looking at Hungary's approach and position on certain particular events. So what are you referring to? Are you referring to the European refugee crisis or some other issue?
You know, thank you. No, thank you for picking up on that. The fact is that Hungary has taken certain positions on issues starting from Brexit to the refugee crisis and how Europe needs to deal with issues within their midst. And the European Union is a strategic partner of India. The Hungarian government has actually, in a sense, taken a position which is sometimes contrary to that of other European partners within the EU. So this will be, we see this as an opportunity to hear from them directly what their perception is in terms of these issues, which are actually very current on the international agenda. As you know, they have had a very bitterly fought and a very controversial referendum earlier this month. So we would like to talk to them about these matters, which are of salience. So that is what. For the date of the last visit, I'll just tell you in a second. 93 was the last time that we had an Indian high-level visitor from, I think it was the Vice President, the President at that time. The President of India had gone. So it's again been a very long gap. So these are both visits that have been overdue for more than 10 years each. In this case, 20 years plus. So these are extremely important occasions from that perspective. Well, I see no other questions, so thank you all for your attention.
सबसे पहले खड़ा हो